Guys, welcome back to today's video. In today's video, taking a look here at the U.S. Senate for the 2024 election. Let's go into today's video. Welcome back to LTE 2024. In today's video, taking a look here at the U.S. Senate, taking a look here at several of your safe states and the battleground states. And guys, there are quite a few battleground states in the U.S. Senate. Now, for the U.S. Senate here, we have 34 seats up for grabs. Approximately 1/3 of all the states are up for grabs in a Senate seat. And in this election, there will be 34 seats up for grabs out of the 100 seats up for grabs. Each state has 2 senators. Taking a look here at some particular swing states before we get into the safe states. Here in the state of West Virginia here. The state of West Virginia here, Democratic incumbent Joe Manchin decided not to run for re-election. I believe in November 2023, he decided that, hey, he's not going to run for re-election due to the fact that it is highly unlikely that he will actually end up keeping his seat. Taking a look here at some polling data, you see here that Jim Justice, who is his most likely competitor, is beating him in a majority of the polls. Jim Justice, a relatively wealthy GOP member there, will probably end up beating him, and it will be very humiliating for him to lose, generally speaking. So it's not necessarily so good looking for him there in the state of West Virginia. Moving on here to the state of Montana. The state of Montana, we do see here that Senator Jon Tester, who is an incumbent running for re-election, is not facing many challenges here. He is doing relatively good against any of his possible Republican challengers. Now, his Republican challengers are in a very diverse field, and we do not yet know who his Republican challenger will be exactly. Although in the many Republican challengers that he has right here, he is beating them handily. Now you might be wondering, why are Democrats doing good in the Senate in a state like Montana? In the state of, sorry, did I go to Ohio? Sorry about that. I was looking at the state of Ohio. But let's take a look here at the state of Montana. In the state of Montana, he's doing good. Okay, he's doing good. He's doing bad in some polls here. In Rosendale, going against Rosendale, she's doing relatively bad in some of those polls. But in a majority of these polls, he's doing good. Okay, he's doing relatively good in a majority of these polls. And you might be wondering, how are Democrats doing good in these particular states, like the state of Montana, a state which Donald Trump won by approximately 20 points? Or how are they even doing good in states like Ohio in the Senate, where you see here Brown, an incumbent, is actually taking control here over any of his Republican challengers in a state which Joe Biden ended up losing by approximately 8 points. How is this happening? Well, the fact of the matter is that Senate races and general election races are complete opposites. The fact that Donald Trump has Montana as being in his safe column for the general election, but Republicans are losing in the state of Montana, in states like Ohio, in states like Arizona, in states like Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, not West Virginia, but every other state, they're losing by relatively large margins, is because of the fact that Joe Biden is not very favorable. That is the reason why Democrats should consider not nominating Joe Biden. It doesn't make sense to nominate Joe Biden when you have other progressive individuals, such as Bernie Sanders, such as Elizabeth Warren, such as AOC, such as Jon Tester, such as almost every Democrat in these Rust Belt states, in these particular swing states, who are doing very well among their constituents in that state and will most likely do very good among other constituents in other states. When you have a situation when the incumbent president is behind of the former president who he once beat in a majority of the polls in the swing states, in the Rust Belt, in the Sun Belt, by extremely large margins, and when you have Democrats here in the state of Pennsylvania beating Republicans by large margins, in the state of Virginia beating Republicans by large margins, in states like Nevada beating Republicans by large margins, and you're running a candidate who's behind Donald Trump by large margins in these states, a complete opposite. That is why I think the Democrats really need to focus on nominating a different candidate, because what you're seeing here is that Democrats are doing very well in these Senate races. In the state of Ohio, Sheridan Brown here. Again, I accidentally looked at this poll. I'm very sorry about that. But here in the state of Ohio, Democrats are, again, doing relatively good. And this is why, again, I say Democrats need to nominate someone else. Imagine if Democrats were to nominate Sheridan Brown. They would have a very good shot of taking the state of Ohio. Definitely speaking, they would have a very good shot of taking a state like Ohio. And think about that, 18 electoral votes going on to the existing layer that Joe Biden already has, that coalition that Joe Biden already has. And by the way, transferring Joe Biden's coalition to Sheridan Brown would be very simple, okay? Joe Biden does not have extremely like Bernie Sanders type coalition surrounding him. He does not have that type of coalition. He does not have a Donald Trump type coalition. He has a coalition which is full of moderates, full of, generally speaking, establishment Democrats. And the establishment Democrats can move around with the establishment candidate. And whoever the DNC props up, that is who they will vote for. So Sheridan Brown here could become the Democratic nominee, give them 18 more electoral votes in the general election. He could be very competitive in states like Nevada. He could be competitive in states like Michigan, in states like Wisconsin. In all these states, he could be extremely competitive. Now, is Joe Biden competitive in states like Michigan and Pennsylvania? Yes. But would Sheridan Brown do, generally speaking, a very good job compared to President Biden? Yes, he would do a very good job. Which is why, and on top of that, do you think Sheridan Brown and Joe Biden disagree on that much policy? No, they don't. So would it make sense for Democrats to nominate someone else? No, it wouldn't. And I know people say, "Oh, incumbency, incumbency, incumbency." Yeah, but I don't really think that incumbency is such a big advantage. I think people really overestimate incumbency. I think that it's generally speaking overestimated. I think that as long as your name is out there, that's literally all that matters. Um, I don't really see that's not a huge issue. I mean, Joe Biden in 2020 had a greater chance of beating Donald Trump than he does now. And I feel like people are very much overestimating incumbency. Incumbency has your name out, yeah, but if you are very unfavorable, then you have a very negative connotation to yourself, right? You have a very negative connotation to yourself, and that could be bad. And whereas other individuals, such as Shannon Brown, who almost no one in the Democratic Party even knows, could um, create his own reputation compared to Joe Biden, who kind of has a reputation. He's been in Congress for 50 years. He's been in office. Everybody knows who he is. And he has a, generally speaking, negative connotation. People think of him, his age. His age is not good. Okay, 77% of Americans think that he will not make it through a second term. That's not good. Nobody thinks that about Sheridan Brown. Nobody thinks that Sheridan Brown is going to die within the next 5 years. But Americans think that about President Biden. It's not necessarily good for them. But here, moving on here to the state of Pennsylvania, again, Democrats are doing good in these particular states. Casey doing relatively good, going against a Republican challenger. McCormick is going to do relatively good. Even John Fetterman, for crying out loud, okay, guys, was able to beat Dr. Oz by 5 points. Is Joe Biden going to beat Donald Trump by 5 points? No way. So these Democrats in the Senate are extremely, extremely smart Democrats. They're able to win elections, and that's what really matters. Joe Biden is not able to win elections. He's proven himself at this point that he's not going to be competitive with Donald Trump in these states like Nevada, in states like Michigan. He's going to lose in Nevada by, I think, 5 to 6 points. He's behind in all the polls. By even in one poll in the state of Michigan, I saw Joe Biden behind of Donald Trump by 12 points. 12 points is amazing, guys. Amazingly horrible for President Biden. Arizona here. Arizona, again, Democrats are doing relatively good in this state, okay? I mean, you can just bring any Democrat against Donald Trump and they're going to beat him, okay? Any Democrat against Donald Trump. Any one of the Democrats in these states are going to beat Donald Trump, okay? The only person who cannot beat Donald Trump is Joe Biden. That's the only person who cannot beat Donald Trump is Joe Biden. Every other Democrat in the Senate can beat Donald Trump. I don't care whether you like the Democrat or don't like the Democrat. I put out a poll recently about Gavin Newsom, and a lot of people were saying, "Oh, Gavin Newsom is such a horrible governor, this and that." Okay, I'm not going to agree or disagree with that. You guys can make a decision. But Gavin Newsom has a much better shot of beating Donald Trump than Joe Biden. Joe Biden does not have a shot of beating Donald Trump. He's proven himself at this point that he is totally incompetent of beating Donald Trump. He's totally incompetent on so many different levels of beating Donald Trump. But anyways, Democrats here doing relatively good. Carrie Lake ran for governorship. She did a horrible job. Again, I don't know why she's running. She already lost one time in the governor's race, but I mean she's transferring over to the Senate. She's trying to run for Senate. She lost in the governorship. Her name is already out there. She lost. I don't see her winning again. She's going to lose badly, and that's going to be the end of Carrie Lake's campaign. A political journey, unless she gets elected to be Trump's VP. Other than that, she's done. Nevada here, moving on here, the state of Nevada. Democrats, again, doing relatively good. A lot better than Joe Biden is doing in the state of Nevada, by the way. You see in one poll, Republicans are doing good. Other than that, not really. Republicans are doing horrible in the state of Nevada. Any generic Democrat could be Joe Biden. Could be Donald Trump. In the state of Wisconsin here, we only have one poll here, not too much. And now the reason why possibly is because of the fact that Republicans really haven't solidified on a candidate yet. We don't really have much information. Now, in some states, we don't have much information either. Like in the state of Michigan, we have a lot of candidates going against. But in the state of Wisconsin, we don't have much polling data. They're running an incumbent. The incumbent is doing relatively good. 1 point out of their Republican. I am going to go ahead and give it to the Democrats as well. In the state of Michigan here, another key critical state, we have a lot of polling here data here from the state of Michigan. Democrats are doing extremely good in this particular state. They're doing pretty good. They're beating the Republicans by not as big of a margin as Donald Trump is beating Joe Biden, but it is a relatively good margin anyways. And I do believe that this is an incumbent, correct? Michigan is running an incumbent. No, it's not an incumbent, but they are doing relatively good. Moving on here, the state of Texas. Now, I think people are overestimating how much of a swing state Texas is going to be. It's not going to be so much of a swing state, and Democrats are really going to be putting their. If Democrats are really going to be investing everything in the state of Texas, that's going to be wrong for them. The fact of the matter is that Texas is far from being a swing state. It's far from being a swing state whatsoever. I know Democrats got hyped up in 2020 after Joe Biden only lost by approximately 5.5% in the state of Texas. The fact of the matter is that Joe Biden's going to lose by a bigger margin in the state of Texas, and Democrats are not doing good whatsoever. They're losing to Ted Cruz by around 14 to 10 points here. Some polls here by smaller margins, although the majority of these polls, Ted Cruz is doing relatively good. There's no way he's going to get overturned. Now, in the state of Florida, now you might be wondering why I'm including Florida. You're thinking Florida is a state which Ron DeSantis won by a relatively large margin. He won by 20 points. Now, the fact of the matter is that Ron DeSantis, I believe, was a unique scenario. I don't think that Republicans are going to end up winning in the general election, in Senate elections, in House of Representatives elections by relatively large margins, such as 20-point margins. I think that Ron DeSantis had an individual case where he had much media attention going in. There was a lot of media attention hyped up around him. A lot of Republicans really liked him. It was a very important moment. That is why, taking a look at this poll, Rick Scott is only ahead of his Democratic challenger by 4 points, which is very far from the 20 points which Ron DeSantis ended up winning. So I think that was an unusual election there. Going back here to our map, let's go ahead and fill out some of these particular states here in the state of Washington, in the state of California. Going down here are eastern and western seaboards and filling out these states on the Pacific and eastern coast. The state of New York is a relatively solid state. I don't think the Democrats are going to end up winning. Now, I know a lot of people are saying a lot of speculation going around that possibly Donald Trump could win in the state of New York, or he could win in the state of New Jersey, or the Delaware is competitive, or stuff like that. I think that it is going to be more closer than the last election. I think that Donald Trump is going to end up getting a lot more votes, or he could end up winning by subtraction, meaning that Joe Biden might not get that much Democratic turnout, or Democrats, which may have voted for Joe Biden previously, may not end up voting for him again. So that's one thing that you could consider in that particular scenario. So that is for the state of New York here. Moving on here for the state of Nevada, Montana, Wyoming, North Dakota, Nebraska, several of the congressional districts there, Missouri, Texas, Mississippi, West Virginia, and also the state of Indiana and the state of Utah. Moving on here, the state for the Democrats here, the state of New Mexico, Hawaii, and that would be it. So now let's go on to our swing states here. Democrats are going to do relatively good. They're going to win here in the state of Nevada. They're going to win in Arizona. Republicans are going to win in the state of Texas by a tilt margin there, by a tilt margin. They're going to win in the state of Florida by a lean margin. And Democrats are going to end up winning in the state of Minnesota by a likely margin. They're going to win in the state of Wisconsin by a tilt margin, the state of Michigan by a tilt margin, and they're going to end up winning in the state of Pennsylvania by a tilt margin, and the state of Virginia by a tilt margin. So the state of Virginia, Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota, there, the Rust Belt, they will end up winning. And then Democrats will end up winning in the state of Maine, there in the state of Maine, by a relatively good margin. All right, so relatively good margin. And for the Republicans here, we will go ahead and give them neither of these states. We will give Democrats the state of Montana, and we will go ahead and give Democrats the state of Ohio. I don't see them winning here. They're going to have to get their campaign in a really good position. I was speculating giving Montana to the Republicans. I know a lot of individuals have given Montana to the Republicans. Jon Tester is an incumbent, name recognition, obviously, and you do see here that he's doing relatively good among his Republican challengers. Now, the reason why I'm talking about name recognition is because of the fact that I don't believe that name recognition is such an important factor when it comes to the general election. Just because when you're a general election candidate, like you get a lot of media attention, right? You get a lot of media attention no matter what. So no matter what, within the course of 7-8 months, you're going to get the media attention that you need, and everybody's going to already know who you are. Now, in the Senate, it's a little bit of a different story because you won't get that much media attention compared to the general election. Whereas Tester, who's been here for an extremely long time, has gotten the media attention that he needs, right? So I think that incumbency in the Senate and in the House of Representatives is a big thing. I don't think that incumbency in the general election is a relatively good thing. It is probably a good thing, but I don't think that it's a big factor going in the general election, because at the end of the day, I mean, if you're running for the first time and you're going against an incumbent president, I mean, you're going to get media attention no matter what, right? You're going to get media attention no matter what. So that is the final prediction for today's video, guys. We have here Republicans at 50 seats, Democrats at 50 seats. Now, I know a lot of you guys are going to be disagreeing with me. I did a prediction, I believe, for the Senate about a month and a half ago, and I actually have not changed my predictions since then. Now, I may have changed some of the margins in which some of these states may go, although I have not changed my prediction in terms of the actual number of seats. Republicans will get 50 seats and Democrats will get 50 seats as well. Now, obviously, in terms of passing legislation, if the Democrats and Republicans are going to be extremely party aligned and vote in terms of their party, obviously the vice presidency will come into play. And in order to know how the vice president will vote, you will have to know how I predict my general election. So make sure you click the end screen for today's video. I will have my general election for the presidency in place there to see how the vice president could vote in a particular election in the end screen for today's video. And make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps out if you're able to subscribe and like the video. And I'll see you in the next video.